So we are on chapter 31 called The Final Vision. And today we are on section 2. A little footnote, the recording for section 1, I had some technical issues arise and lost the recording for section 1. So it is not on YouTube. Normally we post the recordings 30 minutes after the meeting, but you had to be there to experience section 1 because there is no recording for it. But we will be posting today's recording. The question I would ask for you to consider, it's from A Course in Miracles. Who walks with me? The question refers to your spiritual journey towards inner peace. Who accompanies you? Having hosted the ego for so long, how are we to free ourselves from this bondage? What are the steps in relinquishing our ego identity? And when we do free ourselves, are we then alone? These are just some of the questions we'll examine in Walking with Christ. Hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader today is Julie C.
An ancient lesson is not overcome by the opposing of the new and old. It is not vanquished that the truth be known, nor fought against to lose to truth's appeal. There is no battle that must be prepared, no time to be expended, and no plans that need to be laid for bringing in the new. There is an ancient battle being waged against the truth, but truth does not respond. Who could be hurt in such a war unless he hurts himself? He has no enemy in truth. And can he be assailed by dreams?
So just as in poetry, there are terms here that have meaning that would not be immediately obvious on the surface. There's an ancient battle. This would be, in the context of Course in Miracles, refer to the battle of fear against love. You could also reference that as a battle of guilt against innocence. And it's said that the fear battles the love, but love does not battle the fear. And so it's very one-sided there. And so so the question becomes, in this reading we will do today, is how do we vanquish this fear? Well, it's not vanquished by direct opposition. That love does not view this as a battle. There is no battle that must be prepared. There will be what we call a gentle letting go, but love is not going to wage a fight against fear, although fear would gladly wage a fight against love. Now, we use those terms, fear versus love, but this can be broadened to other things. This could be considered the ego versus spirit, or the ego versus God. This is an ancient battle, meaning it's been playing out since the beginning of time. And so it was going on long before any of us were incarnated, born into this world. And thus, what we're encountering here is something that is actually bigger than yourself. While you may find yourself struggling against fear, true. In the broader context, this is bigger than you and I. This is an ancient battle. And so the question will arise is, how do we free ourselves? There's an ancient battle being waged against the truth, but truth does not respond. So we'll explore that further as we get into the reading here. This approach that truth takes to respond to the illusions of the ego.
Let us review again what seems to stand between you and the truth of what you are, for there are steps in its relinquishment. The first is a decision that you make, but afterwards, the truth is given you. You would establish truth, and by your wish, you set two choices to be made, each time you think you must decide on anything. Neither is true, nor are they different. Yet must we see them both before you can look past them to the one alternative that is a different choice, but not in dreams you made, that this might be obscured to you.
Mm-hmm. So I need your help on this. Those of you that are taking notes especially can be helpful, but anyone in whatever way you make notes as we go. It says here that there are steps in its relinquishment, and we'd like to identify them clearly so that at the end of this session, we can say, well, here are the steps that we saw identified. They won't always number them and call them out clearly, so we have to read closely. So I would ask you who are taking notes, whether mental notes or written notes, to take note of the steps. And then at the end, I'm going to ask Julie to remind me at the end, let's review what people identified as those steps. And because what the first is a decision that you make, and this is a decision, I'll let you know, this is based on ignorance, a decision based on not knowing what is true. It's a decision made in confusion. And that decision is, I will establish what is true. I'll be the determiner of what is true for me. So that makes one's little self is appointed to be the judge and the authority in the matter of truth. Later on, we'll see that that was a foolish decision and will get in the way of our understanding and recognizing the bigger truth. But for now, that's what, and with that initial error of thinking yourself to be the arbiter of what is true, you set yourself two choices. And so it forks two choices. Neither one is true. And though they seem to be different, they are not really different. Later on, we'll refer to this as the choice to be the leader or the follower in any given situation. You get to decide whether or not you're going to lead or follow. And this too, later on, we will realize was a mistake to assume this is, none of this assumes that you have understanding or clarity. It's just poor decision-making, which later on can be let go of and relinquished. But you must first recognize that this idea of appointing yourself as the arbiter of truth and deciding whether or not you're going to be leader or follower, that those ideas occur to your mind, So we have to recognize them in order to then choose to let them go. Somebody in the chat residence had their hand up. Is that Paul or David or Cheryl?
It's me, Jonica. I just wanted to say this reminds me of in paragraph 4, in the last reading, it said that we continue building a world that suited each of us. And I like that description.
That's very good, David. That is very applicable. Because after all, if I'm just the one, if I believe that I'm the one to decide what truth is, then I should also be able to make all the decisions for what I want the world to be. It's later on, we'll see this is really a concept of I'll be in charge. It's a control strategy. It's not obvious at first, but this is a control strategy of the ego to make you a separate authority all to yourself and stand in opposition to the notion that there is a source of truth that comes from a higher source, higher power than yourself. But we'll begin with the error and then we'll correct ourselves as we go along. Thank you, David. Sandra?
So if you say how you feel and ask for what you want, is that meant to be controlling? Or is that just being honest?
The method that the course teach is one of self-emptying. I really don't know what anything is for. I really don't understand who I am. And so rather than state what you feel or believe first, the course would begin with, I don't know what this world means. I don't know. It begins with emptying all your positions, whether it be thoughts or feelings, emptying yourself of the notions that you already have something to say about the world. By the way, just so this is a side from the Course in Miracles, in 1640, the year 1640, Rene Descartes, on his Meditations on Philosophy, wrote the exact same thing about emptying yourself. And then this is his second meditation came with up with the position that he could, first meditation said, I can't trust anything that I thought was true in the world. The second one came up with the position that you probably recognize. I think, therefore I am. Cognito ergo sum. And this was the foundation of Western philosophy. And Course in Miracles parallels that in many ways. So that's an aside. Forgive me for diverging from the material, but I have been reading about that and find that fascinating that he had those insights some 400 years ago almost.
What about feelings? Where do feelings fit in there?
Let's take that up at another time.
Okay.
Well, but the short version of it is there's only two emotions in the Course. There's one of love and one of fear. Everything else is a variation on those two. All right, so we've made two choices. We've decided we're going to be the one to decide the truth, and we're going to decide whether to be a leader or a follower. Let's identify any other steps that might be needed.
What you would choose between is not a choice, and gives but the illusion it is free, for it will have one outcome either way. Thus is it really not a choice at all. The leader and the follower emerge as separate roles, each seeming to possess advantages you would not want to lose. So in their fusion, there appears to be the hope of satisfaction and of peace. You see yourself divided into both these roles, forever split between the two, and every friend or enemy becomes a means to help you save yourself from this.
Mhm. So now we can clarify further. It's not so much you choose to be the leader or the follower, it's that you believe those are the two choices available to you. And you might switch between leader and follower in different situations. But in truth, these are both positions of inequality, where one is above and the other is below. The leader is above the follower. And so it matters not which role you assume. Both of them advocate and are founded upon inequality. And this is the illusion that we need to come to recognize, the belief, the error in assuming that our souls are not equal. And so you will see yourself divided into both of these roles. They do seem to be different in the specific situation that you might be in, but the bigger meta truth is that they are structures of inequality. And by the way, this plays out in our relationships with people. Why is this meaningful? It sounds a little, it has sounded a little abstract, but in reality, when we encounter other people, if you believe in inequality, then there's a power differential between the leader and the follower. And all that plays out in the subconscious levels, often subconscious levels. It's kind of like a subterranean struggle between who has more power in the relationship. And this is what the ego thrives on. We're not recommending this. We are saying this is what mental illness looks like. This is not love. This is fear, fear-based relating. Sandra?
Can you connect this with giving and receiving are one?
It'll be easier towards the end. Right now, we're still in the phase of this reading where we're describing the problem. Giving and receiving are one is the truth. And so as we get towards the later paragraphs, it'll start to focus more on how do we get out of this problem and get into a healing mode guided by the Holy Spirit. So yes, we can in a few slides. Okay, so we've described the illusion. Let's see, do we have another paragraph describing the problem? Yes.
Perhaps you call it love. Perhaps you think that it is murder justified at last. You hate the one you gave the leader's role when you would have it. And you hate as well his not assuming it at times you want to let the follower in, you arise, and give away the role of leadership. And this is what you made your brother for, and learned to think that this his purpose is. Unless he serves it, he has not fulfilled the function that was given him by you. And thus he merits death, because he has no purpose and no usefulness to you.
So now we get down more into how does this play out in the way I relate to anyone in any situation if I believe there's a power differential, a leader and a follower. In any situation, if I prefer to be the leader, the assertive one, if I prefer to exercise power over others, then I will expect psychologically that others will comply, that they will play along with my need to control. And what happens when they don't play along with my need to control? Then I'm upset. I will feel my power is being challenged, and they might have the same agenda to be lord power over me. And so that creates friction and anger and can lead to deep instinctual desires to reverse the situation and get back on top. This plays out amongst nations that go to war against one another. This, I'm sorry to say, and I don't want to pick on any one culture, but there are many structures for marriage all over the world, and many of them are structured with inequality as the basis for the marriage, particularly in some rigid patriarchal cultures where the husband is all authoritative and the wife culturally is defined by our culture as being subordinate until eventually things modernize and the women start to realize this is not right, and they start to stand up for their rights. In Saudi Arabia right now, the right of women to drive a car is playing out. And this is, in their culture, is a new behavior. And so I'm really not trying to draw the attention to any one culture. I'm just saying that these power differentials play out everywhere because they are largely unconsciously recognized psychological means of control, or submission would be the other side of it. Neither one of them is healthy, and it is the purpose of our reading today to help us figure out how to become free of this assumption of inequality. So if the other person does not fulfill your inequality position, he's not fulfilled the function that was given him by your little self, and thus he merits punishment. All right, so we're still obviously still describing the problem. We'll go on.
And what of him? What does he want of you? What could he want but what you want of him? Herein is life as easily as death. For what you choose as well for him. Two calls you make to him, as he to you. Between these two is a choice, because from them there is a different outcome. If he be the leader or the follower, to you it matters not, for you have chosen death. But if he calls for death, or calls for life, for hate, or for forgiveness, and for help, is not the same an outcome. Hear the one, and you separate from him and are lost. But hear the other, and you join with him, and in your answer is salvation found. The voice you hear in him is but your own. What does he ask you for? And listen well, for he is asking what will come to you, because you see an image of yourself and hear your voice requesting what you want.
Mm-hmm. So this paragraph really gets to the hidden truth that we're reading about in this introductory section. And that is that in every encounter you have with a person, there are two calls. One is a call for a power struggle, We talked about that. The other is a call for life and equality and a mutual appreciation and understanding, a soul-to-soul connection. Two calls. And so it might not be obvious, but one of the ways of becoming free here is to recognize there are two calls. How do you know this? Well, we're reading about it right now because it's a universal truth that is evident, not evident. It's a universal truth that is present in every encounter. As a person is either willing to meet you soul to soul, heart to heart, human to human, or the other call is to elevate one above the other and assume power over. So the recognition that these calls are present is part of the becoming free. Now, let's understand the implications of that. If you hear the call for power over another, you will separate from him and thus are blinded to your own soul and to the soul of the other person. Instead, you are pulled into contention. And so Sandra asked earlier about feelings. Sandra, if you hear the call for power and control, feelings will come along with that. It will be feelings of opposition, a feeling of separation, a feeling of lack and limitation here. But if you hear the other call, the call from deep within your soul, and by the way, the previous section, 31.1, was all about these two calls. The other call is a call from your soul to his soul. It's a call that is present throughout all creation because souls wish to connect with each other. If you hear that call, you will join with the other person. And in your joining, do you find yourself? Is your salvation found? For in other words, by recognizing the soul in another is your equal, a soul just like you find your own soul in that moment, that realization comes to you, and we call that's where your salvation is found. We'll elaborate on that in this final few sentences. The voice you hear in your brother soul calling to you is not different from your soul calling from him. It's the same. It's a gift of creation. It's in the DNA of creation that your souls should unite. And so the voice you hear in him is but your own. What does he ask you for? Well, listen well. He's asking what will come to you. So ultimately, your souls are seeking the same thing. Your souls are seeking for inner peace, harmony, appreciation, understanding, mutual identification, and love. They don't have different agendas. Souls, it's the nature of souls to share the same agenda. And so, Sandra, the feelings that stem from hearing that call are entirely different than the feelings that stem from the call for power differentials. And what we're asserting is that unbeknownst to you, unrecognized by your superficial mine. These things are playing out in countries, in marriages, in family life. These things are playing out at dinner tables all over the world. These things, it's a subterranean, it's not explicitly said, but it's implicitly present universally. And part of the relinquishment is to recognize the calls and then to make a choice of what do you want to do with your life? Which call do you want to reinforce in your own relationships? So before you answer that, we'll go on.
Before you answer, pause to think of this. The answer that I give my brother is what I am asking for, and what I learn of him is what I learn about myself. Then let us wait an instant and be still, forgetting everything we thought we heard, remembering how much we do not know. This brother neither leads nor follows us, but walks beside us on the self-same road. He is like us, as near or far away from what we want as we will let him be. We make no gains he does not make with us, and we fall back if he does not advance. Take not his hand in anger, but in love, for in his progress do you count your own. And we go separately along the way, unless you keep him safely by your side.
So we said that there are clear steps in relinquishing the ego and recognizing that there are two calls that you can follow in any encounter is one of the essentials there. And then you have to ask yourself, which of those calls do you wish to live your life according to in that moment? It's not, most people are unconscious that when they encounter another person, there's really in that moment is an opportunity to practice healing and peace. They can easily let that awareness slip by and be unaware. But the way in which you choose to show up and represent yourself towards your brother and what you look for in your brother is actually a statement about yourself. It begins with your intention, your purpose, your choice, your identity. The answer I give my brother is what I'm looking for. And when you're looking for that in your brother, you will find it in yourself. This is the laws of perception in the Course of Miracles, that our brothers are mirrors of ourselves. Just a second. Some people falling out of the meeting that need to come back in. Okay. And then what are we told in the steps of relinquishing? Then let us wait an instant and be still. And how long is an instant? Pretty quick. But it's a instant of recognition of what you really want for your life. For that, this is an instant of aligning with the everlasting present, the everlasting now. An instant of aligning with a sense of purpose that unites you with the plan of creation. Be still an instant. Forget that your agenda, forget all the things you might have rehearsed ahead of time of what you were going to say and your do, and just be present in that moment of time and realize that you're here for a purpose. It's not random. This encounter that you're having, the Holy Spirit is your champion, your cheerleader, that this could be an encounter where you honor the soul of another and thus help to bring healing to this moment. Um, and so now we transition from what was a leader follower opposition with power, one having power over the other. We transition to walking side by side, hand in hand, equals, soul to soul, appreciating that while there may be cultural differences and intellectual differences and demographic differences between people, yes, all that's true. But on the level of our souls, we are of one essence and therefore equal with one another. Paul, David, Cheryl, you have your hand up?
It was me, Jonica. I just wanted to say that the way I would phrase it is, the voice I choose to hear is what I see in my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what the call is. There's a call and you choose the voice you listen to. And in so doing, can you see how you are really reflecting yourself? It's your choice. This is the power of your will to make this choice. We can review these matters in this format and in many other formats, but in that moment of encountering another person, it's you doing the choosing of which voice you will listen to. And so obviously we are advocating a path of inner peace and a path of appreciation. Sandra, the feelings with this would be one of appreciating the value of their soul and understanding, perhaps in an unspoken level, that this person is a soul just like you, faces many of the same situations in life, not knowing what to do. And in that moment, they may be in their better self, or they may be greatly confused, but there's the fact that they are our soul brothers changes not from moment to moment. So now we've metaphorically achieved equality with the other. We've metaphorically are now walking hand in hand, not one in front and one behind.
Because he is your equal in God's love, you will be saved from all appearances and answered to the Christ who calls to you. Be still and listen. Think not ancient thoughts. Forget the dismal lessons that you learned about this Son of God who calls to you. Christ calls to all with equal tenderness, seeing no leaders and no followers, and hearing but one answer to them all. Because he hears one voice, he cannot hear a different answer from the one he gave when God appointed him his only Son.
Mm-hmm. Well, now we take on a new level. Before we said there are two calls, a call to have power over in a relationship, or a call to recognize equality, but we didn't say where that call came from. Now we're told that the call that Christ calls to all of us. So this becomes perhaps a little bit more mystical. We would say the Christ within you calls with equal tenderness to all souls. In fact, in Course in Miracles, we would say that Christ within you is always calling to other souls. But as that call starts to rise into your conscious mind, it may encounter barriers or obstacles, such as if you're really angry at that moment, the call for Christ will not be heard because the anger is clouding your unawareness in that moment. And there are many other feelings, Sandra, that can act as barriers to your hearing the call for Christ in that moment. The entire purpose of A Course in Miracles is to help remove those barriers, to help get all this clutter of anger and judgment and inequality and false beliefs and guilt, to clear that from our mind. We read about it just in the previous paragraph. It says, forget everything we thought we heard and forget remembering how much we do not know. And remember how much we do not know. All that stuff that has been crammed into our minds that cause us to begin to think that we are the source of the truth, and that leader follower is the way of all that beliefs. Forget all that. Empty the mind of these things, just like Rene Descartes did 400 years ago, so that, for what purpose? So that this gentle, tender, loving call to equality, to join with your brother, that you might recognize it in the moment when it's happening, so that you might be aware of the call within your soul, and so that you can then respond to it. The entire Course of Miracles is based on this transformation of being able to hear that gentle, loving call. Remember, in this, I think it's the second paragraph we read today, love will not fight against your fear. Love will not oppose and overpower your choice to entertain fear. You must be willing to relinquish your fears so that you might hear the call to love. We'll go on.
Be very still an instant. Come without all thought of what you ever learned before, and put aside all images you made. The old will fall away before the new without your opposition or intent. There will be no attack upon the things you thought were precious and in need of care. There will be no assault upon your wish to hear a call that never has been made. Nothing will hurt you in this holy place, to which you come to listen silently and learn the truth of what you really want. No more than this will you be asked to learn. But as you hear it, you will understand you need but come away without the thoughts you did not want, and that were never true.
So there is within A Course in Miracles a program, an application called mind training. And what this paragraph speaks to that, to practice using your mind for good, using your mind to promote peace and harmony, and How is that done? What are the steps in relinquishing the monkey mind, the chaotic mind? Well, we know the direction is towards quietness and stillness, calmness, tranquility, contentment, peace. Be very still an instant, and then come without all thought of what you ever learned before, putting aside all the images you made. In other words, empty your mind of today's preoccupations and dramas and stuff. We know that they happen, but for this period of practice, let that voice that wants to rehearse and recall all your troubles be still. Don't re-energize it. Don't amplify all that drama, but rather take the path towards stillness. This requires mind training. We can explain it in 2 minutes, but it might take 2 years of practice if you haven't done this before. Practice being quiet. This is what Rene Descartes learned to do in his meditations on first philosophy in 1640. Come without all his thoughts of what I ever learned before and put aside all the images, all the beliefs, all the attitudes that we ever made, so that we empty ourselves of what the world has taught us, so that we might hear the call of Christ within our soul. And know that this place in your interior world, your inner world, is what we will refer to as your holy home. This will be a place we will learn to come back to again and again. And when you become familiar with the doorway, finding in your mind that threshold that you cross over into this part of your mind where it's calm, it becomes easy to go back there because now you know your way into that zone, into that quiet, holy home of yours. So it requires practice. Yeah, let's take some comments. Heather?
I love that it reminds me of the lesson where it says, forget this course, forget everything you've learned, come with wholly empty hands unto your God. It's like we need to empty ourselves of everything that's come before that we think we remember and that we think we know, and just come with wholly empty hands so we can receive the gift that's available to us right now.
It really is. So this notion of empty hands, emptying your mind of the thoughts, is not new. And it can be found in many spiritual traditions. And I can't cite them all because it's so broad, but I will mention in the New Testament, it says, you don't put new wine into an old stiff wine sack, because the old stiff wine sack is inflexible and it will burst. New wine is new truth, new understanding, revelation. You have to put new wine into a new wine sack. It's flexible, it's able to accommodate the expansion and growth. And so it's the idea is you got to, and it's also metaphors such as empty your cup that it might be filled. And again, this is found in many, many traditions in the Jesuits in the Counter-Reformation taught it as the via negativa, the way of negation, the way of emptying yourself of your beliefs so that you're not so full of yourself, full of your beliefs, but emptying your beliefs. Sandra?
I think another great way to put it is the willingness to be vulnerable. Because if I'm not willing to be vulnerable, then I'm going to just be trying to be in control all the time. I'm complete.
Thank you. Okay, so the emphasis here on the stages, if you're still taking notes at this point, the steps to relinquishment is to be very still and enter into this holy place. Some people might say, well, when and where should I do this? You do it daily. It's recommended that you begin your day this way. And it's also recommended that you end your day this way. And that would be wherever you are. Julie?
Forgive your brother all appearances that are but ancient lessons you have taught yourself about the sinfulness in you. Hear but his call for mercy and release from all the fearful images he holds of what he is and of what you must be. He is afraid to walk with you and thinks perhaps a bit behind, a bit ahead would be a safer place for him to be. Can you make progress if you think the same, advancing only when he would step back and falling back when he would go ahead? For so do you forget the journey's goal, which is but to decide to walk with him, so neither leads nor follows. Thus it is a way you go together, not alone. And in this choice is learning's outcome changed, for Christ has been reborn to both of you.
So when this invitation to join with your brother in the recognition of the value of their soul being no different than your soul, we know that your brother may not always be in a state of mind where that comes easy. He might be troubled and not clear on that. And so the question becomes, how do we then respond? So he's kind of not ready to step into the truth, not ready in that very moment to step into the recognition of his part in this holy relationship. And the image that comes to me, have you ever walked down the street with a 4-year-old? Well, pretty soon you realize that their legs are still developing and still growing. They're short and they can't keep up with your adult-like normal pace, that they have to go at their own pace. And so this requires that you adjust to accommodate them out of love. I suppose you could drag them along at your own pace, having them stumble and go way beyond their limits, but that would not be loving and that would not work. And so, so remember what we're here for. We're here to walk alongside our brothers, and that requires patience and not it's a relationship to time. It's realizing as long as we are fulfilling our function of helping and healing and recognizing, following inner guidance, then we're using time well. There's no reason to try to hurry someone else's healing, but rather to be a support for it.
An instant spent without your old ideas of who your great companion is, And what he should be asking for will be enough to let this happen. And you will perceive his purpose is the same as yours. He asks for what you want and needs the same as you. It takes perhaps a different form in him, but it is not the form, but one purpose. But it is not the form you answer to. He asks and you receive, for you have come with but one purpose, that you learn you love your brother with a brother's love. And as a brother, must his father be the same as yours, as he is like yourself in truth.
Mhm. And so a lot of the references here are to what your brother asks of you. We should state that many times these are unspoken, but I find it very amazing that people I have never met before can have an encounter where we both at the very same time recognize what needs to be done, and there's an unspoken sense of purpose. For instance, if you're walking out of the store and a lady with a cane in front of you falls to the ground, and you and another person rush up to help her, you don't have to speak what needs to be done there. It's understood what needs to be done. You look in the other person's eyes and you know you're going to help her. Maybe we need to help her get to a bench or further. It's many of these things are unspoken. So when we say your brother asks for help, many times we mean it's something with his heart and soul that is calling, recognizing that you are hearing the same call that he hears. And so part of learning to get beyond the chaos and the obstacles to peace, all the clutter, is learning to hear this inner voice and recognize that you're not the only one hearing it, that it's calling to everyone, and that this is something that calls us together. I find the easiest way to do this is to keep in mind, what is your purpose? Why are you here? What is your life about? And before you try to answer that for yourself, remember the error in the very first paragraph is deciding that you'll be the one to decide the truth is the first error. The Holy, in answer to all those questions we just asked about your purpose, the Holy Spirit already has the universal answer for all of us. Come with one purpose, that you learn you love your brother with a brother's love. That's our purpose for being here. You don't need to be clever and come up with a separate purpose. That is the purpose for creation. And that is the purpose that unites us together.
Together is your joint inheritance remembered and accepted by you both. Alone, it is denied to both of you. It is not clear that while you still insist on leading or on following, you think you walk alone, with no one by your side. This is the road to nowhere, for the light cannot be given while you walk alone, and so you cannot see which way you go. And thus there is confusion and a sense of endless doubting as you stagger back and forward in the darkness and alone. Yet these are but appearances of what the journey is and how it must be made. For next to you is one who holds the light before you, so that every step is made in certainty and sureness of the road. A blindfold can indeed obscure your sight, but cannot make the way itself grow dark. And he who travels with you has the light.
So we said that the Christ calls you from deep within to join as equal with your brother. So we are talking in the domain of our souls here, not in the physical domain of bodies and legs and walking and hands. So it's a metaphor for the soul. And in that metaphor, there's now three of us in every encounter. There's you, there's the other soul that you are encountering, and there is the one who holds the light before you. He who travels with you has the light. Now that's a reference, it's what we would call an ambiguous reference, but we know within the context of here that we are talking about walking with Christ. So we're talking about your soul, being conscious of your soul. This would be the added layer of being Christ conscious at the same time, being conscious that you have a purpose for being here to heal and help others heal, and that consciousness, you're not alone and separate in that consciousness, but you have an accompaniment, one who holds the light before you, so that your steps are made sure and certain. Heather?
I like this reference to our joint inheritance. And for me, in this context, it's seeing our innocence in each other and ourselves. Our joint inheritance is our seeing our innocence.
It is. It would be, yeah, so innocence is one property of our joint inheritance. Light, you are the light of the world. Light is one of those properties. Holiness is one of those properties, which is innocence, holiness are equated in that sense. Eternality, eternal life is one of those properties. The ability to unite with all creation because of sharing the same source is one of those properties. So all of this comes.
Don't forget forgiveness.
Along with your joint inheritance. Atisha?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge something that I'm working on that is kind of a snag point for me. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Jonica, about letting go, emptying ourselves. And that to me is connected to then knowing that we have a purpose. You know, like I have to empty before I can be filled with my right purpose. But what has been difficult as a mom, I think partially, but even before then, was having developed ambitions. You know, these ambitions that then help to define who I am. And it is hard to let go of those. It's very hard to let go for me. And then to let go enough so that I can then empty. And then I can have the faith to know that there is a purpose for me. So I just wanted to acknowledge that for myself, that seems to be the realm that I find myself in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Atisha. That really puts practical feet on this for, you know, the world is full of parents that want the best for their children. That, you know, that's admirable. in many cases, that takes a controlling form of, I want my son to be a doctor, even though the son wants to be an artist. And in other cases, parents might say, I really want my children to be happy and healthy and fulfill the life that they wish for. And you know, I'm not saying that there's a correct answer to all this, but certainly parents all over the world struggle with it makes for great movies where, you know, the parents disappointed with the children doesn't follow in their footsteps, or they do follow in their footsteps and are resentful. So yes, that's a big win. And so now I'm hearing what I really needed to say here. All that takes a lot of trust that spirit has a plan that ensures the well-being of your children, regardless of what profession they might take or whom they might marry or where they might choose to live. That it takes a lot of trust, and trust is the foundational characteristic needed to keep progressing in this course. Thank you for sharing that. Noelle?
I've been rereading the rules for decision. I can only take a paragraph at a time, really, to try to take it in, but they apply to every single thing. And I'm finding that they're really not only helpful, but comforting. And as you said, it means, or as Atisha said too, emptying and trusting totally.
Yeah, thank you, Noelle. You know, one of the things that we haven't done, but maybe we could do, is have really spend some time talking about what it's like to empty yourself, and then trust. What so just to spend a moment, dwell on that for a moment. I think the important thing is the letting go of your preconceived plans and agenda based on what you thought would be the best in the past. The important thing is your willingness to let go. It may be that the very thing that you had in mind, you will be guided to pursue by spirit. But the key thing is that you be willing to make allowance to be guided by spirit. That's where the ego opposes. The ego wants to go back to square one, where it decides what is true. We don't need any more opinions on the matter. We've already made up our mind. And so it's a practice that, like anything else, gets easier as you have more and more experiences with it. You learn to trust that process as you've had more opportunities to do so. Sandra?
I think too, it's important to trust our own innocence, because otherwise I'm going to believe the lies that I've been told about myself and operate from that paradigm.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes. Well, that's as far as we're going to read tonight. We've got more to come on another day. I want to thank Julie for being our reader today. And I want to thank Brian and Lindsay for your participating.
In North Carolina, you
And
have 5 going on 6 residents in North Carolina.
invite you all to come on back again soon. We'll pursue this again tomorrow. Ryan and Lindsay, Monday nights we meet at 7. If you're available, you're welcome to attend at any time. Namaste.
Namaste. Thanks, Julie, for reading.
Thank
You're
you,
Jonathan.
welcome.
Thank you, Julie.
Namaste, everyone.
Thanks, Julie.
Great
Thanks,
night.
Monica.
Peace and love.